Welcome to a KeySmash Studios tutorial. In this video, we're going to be covering how to create an inventory for your game. This will mostly be focusing on 2D, but there's really only one difference between 2D and 3D, and I'll point that out when we get there for if you're wanting to create it in 3D as well. If you find this video helpful, please remember to hit the like and subscribe button. As you can see, I've already set up the scene for this video. There's the squirrel there, that'll be our player. I've already attached a movement script to him as well as other components that we'll need for this video. This video is solely focusing on how to create an inventory. First thing we're going to do is drag our basic nut into the scene. This is going to be the item that our user is able to interact and pick up. We're going to go ahead and set that order in the layer to 2 so we can see it, and we're going to give it a 0.2 in the X and a 0.2 in the Y. We're going to add a collider to this. And then we're going to make our X 4 and our Y 4 on our collider. We also want to make sure that we make it a trigger. And then we're going to go ahead and create a tag for it. And I'm simply going to call this item. We'll go back to our basic nut and we'll go ahead and attach the item tag to our nut. We'll go ahead and drag this back into art so it's made into a prefab. And then we'll just randomly put these throughout the scene. We're going to have 5 throughout our scene. And then because of the way I create the inventory script, we want to make sure that they're all named basic nut. We don't want there to be numbers. And then for organization purposes, I'm simply just going to drag all of these and put them into scene objects. And now we're done with the items that we'll be picking up, so we'll go ahead and create a canvas. And inside this canvas, we're going to create an image. This image is going to be our inventory slots, so we'll go ahead and name it that. And then we'll go ahead and drop into the sprite our inventory slot image. We want to make sure that our width is 400, and we'll just leave our height at 100. I'm going to go ahead and drag down our inventory slots to the bottom of the screen. And then what we want to do is create buttons inside this. This is going to be how we interact with our items in our inventory. I'm going to remove the text inside it. And I'm going to make it 75 by 75. I'm going to put the sprite as none. I'm going to put the transition to none. And then I'm going to put the first exposition to -145. After we've created our inventory script, we'll come back and put a function inside our onClick. So we'll go ahead and duplicate this button, and we'll move this one to -50. We'll put the third one at +50, and we'll put the fourth one at a +145. Now that we've created our inventory slots, we're going to create 2 texts in our canvas. The first text is going to be for when our inventory is full, as we want to inform the user of this so they know they can't add more items. And we're just going to put, "You've reached the limit." And then we're going to make our size 50. We're going to put it center for alignment. We're going to make the text white. And then we'll make the width 350 and the height 350. We'll go ahead and duplicate this, and then we're going to have a text for when an item's been used, so you're aware that the code's working. I'm not going to have game-related outcomes come from using the items, such as health increasing or mana increasing or different types of power-ups. I'm simply going to show you that it's working through text, and then you can adjust based off the type of game that you have. So we'll go ahead and name this item text. And then the text that it'll display will just be item used. And then we'll take both these texts and go ahead and unactivate them. And that's the entirety of our canvas, so we'll go ahead and create our inventory script. So we'll go down to our folders, we'll go to script folder, and we'll go ahead and create a new C# script, and we'll name it inventory. And we'll open it up. And we want to start by adding a new using. This will allow us to be able to manipulate our images. So from here, we'll go ahead and create our variables for the script. We're going to start with our public ones. The first one we're going to do is a game object for our full inventory text. The next one is going to be a game object for our used item text. And then we'll have a public sprite for our item image. This will simply be a singular sprite because I'm only using one item, which is the basic nut, but if you're using multiple items, you want to make sure to make this an array. And then finally, we'll have an image array of our inventory. And what we'll eventually put in here are the 4 buttons, so that way we can change the images of those buttons to the item that's currently in that position in the inventory. Now we'll go ahead and create our private variables. We're going to have 3 different private variables. The first one will be a list of game objects called items. The second one will be a color. And the last one will be an int. That's our limit for how many items we want our player to be able to hold. And that's all of our variables for this script, so we'll go ahead and go down to our start. And in our start, we'll go ahead and initialize our variables. So the first one we're going to initialize is our items. And we're just going to make a new empty list. And then we'll go ahead and initialize our color variable. And I'm making it white, so that way whatever color we have will just stay the color as it is. The reason we're having this color variable is so we can manipulate the alpha channels of our images, as when there's nothing in a specific position in our inventory, we want the image to go away, so we're just going to give it an alpha channel of 0, so that way it's empty. And then we'll go ahead and do our limit, which in this case is going to be 4. And then we're going to take our texts that are in the scene and set them as not active in case we didn't do that in the scene, as we don't want them popping up in the beginning of the game. And finally, we're going to call a function that we'll name display. This function will be created later in the video, but we're just going to go ahead and call it here for now so we don't forget. And all this function will eventually do is show the items that we currently have in our inventory, and then also set a 0 alpha to the slots where there are no items. We actually don't need an update for this class, so we can go ahead and delete this. I'll go ahead and get rid of that comment while we're there. And then we'll go ahead and create our first function, which will be add item. It'll be a void function, and it'll take in a parameter of game object item. And then inside this function, we're simply going to add the game object item to our items array. We're going to set active to false for our item that we've touched. Then we're also going to call the display function that will update our inventory on the UI. And now we'll move on and create our use item function. This one will be a public void function, and it'll take in a parameter of I. This function will be called whenever we push the buttons that are in our UI, so that way we can use the item that we've selected, and the I will represent which button we've currently pushed. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that there's actually an item in the button that we've pushed, so we want to check that our I is less than items.count. And then we're going to create a switch statement, and inside this switch statement we're going to be comparing the names of our items. So that way if you have multiple different types of items, you can go ahead and check which one you've selected, so that way you can do code that's specific to that one. But in our case for this video, we just have the one item, so we're just going to be checking for the case of basic nut. And inside this case, we want to display that we've used the item, so we'll call our item use text and set it active. And then I want this text to go away after 1 second, so I'm going to call an invoke on another function that we'll create at the end of the video, and this function will just be called item done. And we're going to call this after 1 second. And then we want to remove our item from the index that we're currently at, so we'll do items.remove at our current index, which is I. And then finally we'll call that display function again that we'll be writing next. So like I said, we'll go ahead and create our display function. This will be a void, and it'll have no parameters. We're going to create a for loop that'll loop from 0 until our inventory length. And we're going to be checking again that I is less than items.count. And whenever that's true, in other words, whenever there should be an item displayed in that inventory slot, we're going to do another switch statement that checks the name of the item and then displays that correct image. So the way that we're going to display this image is we're going to take our inventory at the current index of I, we're going to find its sprite, and then we're going to set the item image that is our public variable as the sprite for that image. This is where if you had multiple items that you could pick up, you would want this item image to be an array, so that way you could set this to the index of the desired image inside your array. And then what we'll go ahead and do is make sure the alpha channel of our color is set to 1 so we can see the image. And then finally we'll set the color of our inventory at the current index to the color that we've defined. And now we'll go ahead and go down and create an else. And this else is for if at I there is no item. So we want to make sure that the inventory slot is empty. So we'll go ahead and do the opposite of what we did inside our case, which is taking the inventory sprite and setting it to null. And then we're taking our alpha channel of our color that we've defined and setting it to 0, and then setting the inventory color to that defined color. And that is our whole display function. So now we'll go ahead and we'll create our onTriggerEnter function. And this is the one spot that I was telling you that if you're doing 3D will be different. Instead of having it onTriggerEnter 2D, you'll have it onTriggerEnter. And that's essentially the only difference, is that you want to make sure that your colliders are in 3D instead of 2D. And then also, as you can see, it autofilled the parameter for me, but it's a collider 2D, so if you're doing this in 3D, just make sure to get rid of that 2D ending on the collider. So now we'll go ahead and create an if statement that checks the tag of our collision. And we're going to check for item, as that's what we named our tag. And then we want to make sure that we're still within the limit of our inventory. So we'll go ahead and create an if statement that checks that our item count is within the limit. And then what we're going to do is, if it's outside the limit, we're going to display our full inventory text. And then we'll also call another invoke that will get rid of that text after 1 second. And then we'll go ahead and create an else for if we are inside that limit, we want to add the item that we've just touched. And you want to make sure that you get the game object of that item and not the collider of that item. So finally, we can go ahead and do our last two functions, which are the functions that we've called inside our invokes. And these will pretty much be the same, except calling for different texts. So our first one we'll do is ridText. And all we're going to do inside this is take our full inventory text and set its active to false. And then we'll do the same for our item done function that we called an invoke on earlier. And again, all you're going to do here is do our used item text and set its active to false. And that's the entirety of our inventory script. So we're going to go ahead and go back to the scene. We'll go to our squirrel. And then we want to attach our inventory script. We'll go ahead and open up our canvas. Our full inventory is this full text. Our used item is this text. Our item image we'll get from art. It's our basic nut sprite. And then our inventory size will be 4. And these will be the buttons that are inside our canvas. And now that we've created our inventory script, we want to go back to these buttons. We'll go ahead and create an onClick event. We'll drag in our squirrel. And then we'll go to inventory, use item. This one will stay 0 as that's our first button. This one we want to be 1. This one we want to be 2. And this one will make 3. And that's all you have to do to get your inventory working. So we'll go ahead and click play. And then, like I said, I already created a movement script. It's just tied to my left and right arrows. So I'll go ahead and move the squirrel to pick up all the nuts. And as you can see, it fills up at the bottom. If I touch this last one, it doesn't pick it up and says I've reached my limit. And then if I click on any of the nuts, it removes it from the inventory and says item is used. And it goes ahead and redisplays my inventory. So I can use all of these. And then I can go pick this one back up and use that one now. So as a recap, in this video we created an inventory script that handles a full inventory as well as item usage. It also displays this inventory onto our GUI and allows interaction with said GUI. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video helped you with developing an inventory for your game, and if so, please remember to hit that like and subscribe button. I'll see you next time.